He's officially called off trade talks with Canada.
He is ending all trade talks with Canada effective immediately over a Canadian television ad opposing U.S. tariffs.
The world has just witnessed a quiet yet historic turning point. A brand that once defined the American roadscape for generations has packed up its assembly lines and left. Subaru, long celebrated as a symbol of Japanese durability and reliability, has decided to end vehicle production for Canadian customers in its US factories. The reason? Tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. What was meant to bring jobs back home is now driving manufacturers away faster than ever. But this story goes far beyond a single automaker. It marks a larger shift in global direction. Japan, once Detroit's steadfast partner in engines, steel, and innovation, is no longer looking south. It's looking north, to Canada. While Washington builds walls and turns trade into confrontation, Ottawa is quietly rewriting the rules. And that message is resonating. The future of the automotive, energy, and technology sectors is no longer being shaped in the United States. It's being defined in Canada. Mark Carney's government isn't waiting for Washington to come to its senses. It's taking the initiative. Canada has built a new alliance, and Japan has now publicly placed its trust in it. This is more than a trade adjustment. It represents a fundamental shift in the global balance of power. When Mark Carney stepped onto the stage in Kuala Lumpur, the axis of global industry seemed to tilt northward. Around the same time, the Trump administration announced a 25% tariff on imported cars and metals. The former president hailed it as the dawn of a new era in domestic manufacturing, a promise to bring the jobs back and build cars here again. But reality took a different course. Instead of investing in new American factories, automakers began scaling back and rethinking their strategies. Subaru was the first to officially announce it would stop producing vehicles for Canada in its US plants, moving those assembly lines back to Japan. The cause was obvious. Domestic steel and aluminum prices had soared, making American manufacturing more expensive than importing fully built cars. Subaru's decision sent shockwaves through the auto industry, especially among workers once building Outbacks destined for Canada, now facing uncertainty about their future. As Washington scrambled to justify the tariffs, investors saw what was really happening. Businesses no longer want to expand in the United States. They're looking for exits. Trump's trade policies have triggered what economists call reverse globalization. Instead of bringing production back, they've driven it away. The American auto industry, once a proud emblem of post-war industrial might, is becoming collateral damage in a political game it never asked to play. While tension mounted south of the border, Canada maintained a rare calm. Instead of fiery speeches or retaliation, Ottawa chose quiet precision. Behind closed doors, it began talks with Japan, Malaysia, and China. The strategy was simple. As the US isolated itself through tariffs, Canada would become a haven for global business. Subaru's exit was just one piece of a much larger shift. Toyota, Hyundai, and China's electric vehicle giant BYD have all been rethinking their plans. The US market, once the epicenter of the automotive world, is now bogged down by tariffs and unpredictable regulations. In contrast, Toyota's sales in Canada jumped by 29% in July alone, and that was no accident. Canada's stability, open trade policies, and consistent leadership have turned it into a magnet for manufacturers. Mark Carney's government hasn't relied on lavish subsidies, but something far more valuable: predictability. For automakers squeezed by tariff costs, stability is worth more than gold. In Canada, companies can plan years ahead without worrying that a single tweet will upend their strategy. South of the border, however, constant uncertainty over new tariffs has paralyzed business decisions. The consequences are visible. American factories are shutting down, while Canadian ports are busier than ever, filled with ships from Japan and South Korea. Models once built in Indiana are now assembled overseas and shipped north. It's not coincidence. It's a measurable trend investors now call the northward shift. Each time the White House announces a new round of tariffs, Ottawa responds with another international trade agreement. What's striking is that most Americans don't even realize what's happening. Many believe the tariff war is about protecting jobs. In truth, it's a race to determine who will lead the next industrial era. Mark Carney saw that sooner than anyone else. While Trump wielded tariffs as weapons, Carney chose a different kind of power: trust. He understood that in an unpredictable world, stability and reliability are the greatest strengths. His goal was simple: to restore Canada's reputation as a dependable global partner. For months, Carney worked quietly to build new trade corridors linking Canada with Japan, Malaysia, and China. Not for headlines, but for long-term stability. He recognized that corporations are loyal not to flags or ideologies, but to stability and foresight. Behind the scenes, his team crafted what economists now call a smart trade strategy, one built on regulatory transparency, green manufacturing, and open digital borders. Every part of this plan was designed to attract industries weary of Washington's volatility. While the Trump administration threatened tariffs on nearly everything, Canada positioned itself as the clear alternative: open, dependable, and forward-looking. Carney's style is the opposite of theatrical. No rallies, no fiery sound bites, just a steady sequence of quietly signed agreements that together redrew the map of global trade. Each time Washington closed a door, Ottawa opened too. So when Japan began reevaluating its ties with the American auto industry, Carney moved quickly. He didn't go to Tokyo to lecture about loyalty. He went with an offer: data-sharing partnerships, incentives for green production, and low-emission trade mechanisms. That's what real diplomacy looks like. Not showmanship, but substance. Japan's pivot was more than just a business decision. It was a geopolitical statement. For decades, Japan's auto industry relied heavily on American consumers. But under the weight of tariffs, Tokyo learned a hard truth. In the new era of global trade, stability, not size, defines strength. Dependence on Washington has become a liability. And so, Japan began searching for more trustworthy partners, starting with Canada. Between the two nations, a new kind of relationship is emerging, built on clean technology, open markets, and innovation. Subaru's move was only the first signal. More and more Japanese automakers are now choosing Canadian ports as their North American entry point, bypassing the United States entirely. As the Carney government reduced import duties and streamlined cross-border procedures, Japan's choice became not only logical, but inevitable. For Tokyo, Canada offers a safe gateway into Western markets without the political turbulence. For Ottawa, it's a golden opportunity to become the new bridge between Asia and the West, a position once held by the United States. Within this broader picture, the symbolism is unmistakable. Japan isn't abandoning America, it's choosing stability. And Canada isn't pleading for trade, it's being invited to lead it. What began as a survival strategy has evolved into a global transformation. The map of the auto industry is being redrawn, and every road now seems to lead north. When Mark Carney arrived in Kuala Lumpur for the ASEAN summit, most expected another routine diplomatic appearance. A few handshakes, polite speeches, and the usual group photo. But what unfolded on that stage stunned not only the delegates in the room, but the world beyond it. Standing before representatives from Japan, Malaysia, China, and Indonesia, Carney didn't deliver slogans or long-winded promises. Instead, in a calm and steady voice, he made a simple declaration: "We'll talk to the United States when they're ready, but we won't wait." One sentence, but it changed everything. It wasn't just a response to Washington, it was a signal that global leadership was shifting. For decades, Canada had been seen as America's quiet neighbor, following the direction set by its larger partner. But in that moment, the roles reversed. Carney declared that Canada would no longer wait for anyone's approval to act, and he proved it that very day. Within hours of his speech, Ottawa unveiled a series of new trade deals with Japan, Malaysia, and China worth billions of dollars, focused on clean technology, artificial intelligence, and electric vehicle manufacturing. These weren't ceremonial gestures for the cameras. They were the foundation of a new industrial order. While Trump's America pulled back behind tariff walls, Carney's Canada reached outward, building bridges of trade and innovation. His message echoed across the Pacific. In a world defined by uncertainty, true power lies not in force or rhetoric, but in the ability to create stability. With that vision, Mark Carney transformed Canada into something far greater, the world's new anchor of economic steadiness. Global media soon called it the Carney Doctrine. Economists named it the Asian Pivot. But for Canadians, it meant something simpler: proof that quiet strength and steady leadership can triumph over noise. While the United States fired off threats on social media, Carney was signing agreements. As Washington burned bridges, Ottawa built new ones. And by the end of the ASEAN summit, one thing had become clear: the world had stopped waiting for America to lead. Its gaze had shifted north. Only months after Carney's historic speech, what many dismissed as symbolic words turned into reality. Japan's major automakers, Subaru, Toyota, and Mazda, began rerouting their North American shipments northward. Instead of passing through California or Texas, cars were now flowing through Canadian ports. At the same time, China's electric vehicle giant BYD announced plans to build distribution hubs in Quebec and British Columbia. And that was just the beginning. Canada was no longer just a buyer in the global supply chain. It had become a gateway, a strategic bridge linking Asia to North American consumers. Vancouver has now overtaken Los Angeles as the preferred entry point for electric vehicle manufacturers, while Montreal has risen as a hub for advanced green battery technology. In Ontario, Japanese investment is pouring in, funding next-generation factories, creating jobs, and driving clean energy innovation. While Washington remains entangled in tariff disputes, Ottawa is focusing on what businesses actually need: clarity and stability. The Carney government has simplified customs procedures, expanded incentives for renewable energy, and strengthened international research partnerships. Together, these measures have made Canada the ideal destination for automakers looking to build their future. Today, nearly every vehicle leaving Japan passes through a supply route that bears Canada's name. That means new jobs for Canadian workers, growth for Canadian cities, and renewed credibility for Carney's policies. South of the border, however, the picture is far less bright. US factories are closing, costs are climbing, and demand is falling. What was once celebrated as a manufacturing revival is now unraveling. General Motors has reported quarterly losses exceeding $1.1 billion. Stellantis has lost another $350 million in just 6 months. This isn't a temporary dip. It's a sign of a deeper fracture in America's industrial foundation. The tariffs that were meant to save manufacturing have instead strangled it, pushing companies to the edge as material costs soar and supply chains tighten. In cities like Detroit and Chicago, factories now run at minimal capacity. Assembly lines that once symbolized American industrial pride stand silent, a stark reminder that politics can erode even the strongest traditions. Consumers, too, have shifted their loyalties. They're turning to Japanese and Korean vehicles, more efficient, smarter, and more reliable. The slogan, "Buy American," has quietly become a question. Why buy American? Trump's vision of America first has faded into something more isolating: America alone. Global partners that once saw the United States as a pillar of trade now see it as a source of risk. Every new tariff intended to project strength only reveals the fragility beneath. Meanwhile, Canada is doing what Washington refuses to do: listen, adapt, and collaborate. As GM and Stellantis cut jobs in the US, Japanese and Chinese automakers are hiring in Ontario and Quebec. Economists have a name for this phenomenon: the Great Reversal. It's when the smaller neighbor becomes the manufacturing heart of a continent. The message of the Carney era is unmistakable. In a chaotic world, trust is the true power. And Canada has proven that leadership doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, the strongest way to lead is quietly, and let results speak for themselves. When Japan formally unveiled its new trade strategy, the message resonated across the world's financial capitals. The axis of global economic power had shifted. For nearly a century, the United States set the rhythm of global trade. But that rhythm has changed. It is no longer Washington writing the next chapter, it's Ottawa. What began as a reaction to tariffs has grown into something much larger. A quiet global reconstruction, a transformation that is redefining America's place in the industrial world. Mark Carney's approach has become the new benchmark for modern diplomacy, calm in crisis, clear in action, and unwavering in purpose. He doesn't threaten or grandstand. Instead, he has turned Canada into a place where real agreements work, where diplomacy is built on results rather than rhetoric. And the world has taken notice. Japan has deepened its partnership with Canada. Malaysia has expanded cooperation in clean energy. China has begun routing its electric vehicle exports through Canadian ports. Even Europe, once accustomed to following Washington's lead, is now studying Canada's trade model as a blueprint for the 21st century. Investors call it the Carney effect, a quiet revolution built on trust, data, and long-term thinking. Meanwhile, the United States has drifted into growing isolation. Its tariff policies have turned long-standing allies into competitors and opportunities into hesitation. Today, countries no longer wait for Washington's approval. They chart their own course. The defining question is no longer about who has the biggest economy or strongest military, but who can be trusted. In an unpredictable world, trust has become the most valuable currency, and under Carney's leadership, Canada is the nation printing it. A new trade order is emerging. Major shipping routes now flow through Vancouver instead of Los Angeles, through Montreal instead of Detroit. The industrial map of the world is being redrawn, and at its center stands Canada. Because ultimately, the world no longer follows the loudest voice. It listens to the one it trusts most. And today, that voice speaks from Ottawa. Subaru's withdrawal from the United States was more than a business move. It was a signal, a clear message that global markets have lost faith in the hollow promises of protectionism. They are turning instead toward reliability and foresight. What began as a trade war has become a referendum on an entire style of leadership. The world is choosing whom it trusts to move forward with, and that choice is Canada. Carney's government didn't win through slogans or showmanship, but through vision and pragmatism. By restoring what Washington has lost, stability, cooperation, and credibility, Canada has become a new pillar in an increasingly uncertain global economy. The Canada-Japan trade agreement represents more than a diplomatic success. It is the cornerstone of a new era in economic relations, one where trust replaces empty rhetoric. Across Asia and Europe, policymakers now study what they call the Carney formula. Investors who once flocked to Wall Street are turning to Bay Street. In boardrooms from Tokyo to Berlin, the term Canada-friendly has become synonymous with safe, smart, and forward-looking investment. Meanwhile, south of the border, America's once mighty industrial corridors echo with decline. The partners Washington once sought to control are thriving elsewhere. Canada, long seen as America's quiet shadow, now leads with quiet confidence. The story is no longer about reclaiming influence. It's about redefining it. Every new factory opened, every agreement signed, every alliance forged reinforces a simple truth. North America's economic center has shifted. The future of electric vehicles, clean energy, and advanced technology cannot be built on tariffs or threats. It must be built on trust, cooperation, and long-term vision. And in that future, one phrase will define the new industrial landscape of the world: made with Canada.